What's up, guys? Mighty Lindo here. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about planning your project for Warhammer 40k. Alright guys, so like I said in the intro, today we're going to be talking about planning your project. And I'm going to break it down into some simple steps that I have used that have allowed me to paint up an army to completion, basically. Yeah, so I developed this strategy when I was painting up my Blood Angels army, and specifically my Primaris Blood Angels army. Alright guys, so I'm going to break it down and I'm going to walk you through step by step basically what I did when I painted my Blood Angels, with the first step being finding a paint scheme. So I'm operating under the assumption that you've already chosen an army, you've already gotten excited and bought the models or whatever. Maybe you haven't bought the models, but you've chosen an army, you're excited about it, and this is going to help you get that army from gray plastic to a painted army ready for the tabletop. Alright guys, so step number one is going to be discover your paint scheme. And what I mean by that is build a narrative. You might be a super competitive person who doesn't care about narrative or just whatever, but I'll tell you this, having a narrative to your army is going to help you so much when it comes to painting it. And the reason is you can have cool little things on the model, and because there's a story around it, like, oh, well, why does he have his helmet off? Oh, well, because XYZ. It's going to make you more excited to paint that figure because you actually know who they are. They actually have a story. They're not just a little piece of gray plastic. All right, so build a narrative. How do we do that? Well, what I would suggest is first kind of come up with an idea of the theme of your army. So, for example, with my Blood Angels, I didn't want anything but Primaris in them. Pure Primaris, and because of that, I kind of wanted them to be a successor chapter. I didn't want them to be the Blood Angels, because of course the Blood Angels have Old Marines, so they're going to be a successor chapter of Primaris only Blood Angels. And so with my Marines, I basically came up with the idea, okay, they're a successor chapter, so that frees me up. I can kind of do whatever I want with the paint, but I did want to stick with red, because I like painting red and Blood Angels are red, so I feel like there should be something in there to kind of show that they are Blood Angels. And so what I did is I ended up going with a quarter scheme, kind of like Nova Marines, but the red and black instead of blue and white. And I'd never done a quartered scheme before, and so I wanted to try that, and so I was excited for that, and it differentiated them so they look kind of cool. And yeah, so that's kind of where I got the theme going on with them. But yeah, that's how I got the scheme, is just from kind of building it off that theme and doing something that I hadn't done before. But after that, I actually sat down and I typed out a few pages of lore kind of explaining who they are and what they're doing and why they do the things they do. And all that kind of lore and the work I put into thinking through that really showed me what they should look like. So an example of that is my chaplain. His whole armor is bone colored, and in the lore I kind of made Reavers his kind of personal people. They were the angriest and he was going to protect them from the rage. And so my Reavers are black and bone color quartered. And so this gave me a nice way of providing variety in an army without it looking uncohesive. They all still look like they belong together, but now there's some flavor to it and it looks really cool. So this brings me to number 2, which is build a functional list. Basically sit down, battle scribe, piece of paper, whatever, and plot out a functional list. I wouldn't say a full 2,000 point list. I'd say either 1,000, 1,250, or 1,500. And plot out this list and make sure it's a viable list, I would say. I would It doesn't have to be super competitive, but you want something that's not going to get completely just demolished, because that's going to feel real bad. But yeah, sit down, plan a functional list. All right, so now you've got a functional list. I'm assuming that you have the minis. If not, you'll probably want to acquire them. You don't necessarily have to have them all at once at the beginning, but for me, that's kind of how I like to do it. Although I have done it both ways, where I go a single unit at a time. I would recommend, though, having a pretty decent bulk of minis to paint. That way you can assemble all of them. They're all assembled. You prime them all. They're all ready to go. This is going to help out your efficiency, because you want as few barriers as possible when you actually start painting. All right. So the next step, number 3, is you're going to want to start with a test model. So I basically just started with an intercessor, a basic troop choice, and that's what I would recommend. I'd recommend finding a basic troop and basically just painting up the test scheme. And I'm going to give you some steps what you're going to do. All right. So when you're doing your test model, you want to do it with a purpose. Don't just slap it on or try and discover, what looks cool. That's part of it. But what you really want to focus on is you want to create a formula that you can replicate. So you want to, if it's, it can be something complicated. You could have, wet blend this color and mix these with 50% this and 50% that, or 60 and 40 and whatever. You can do all that if you want to. But what you want to do is you want to create a formula that you can replicate over and over again. And that is going to help your efficiency so much. So what you're doing with this formula is you're going to decide what colors are going to be what, so that way you don't have to second guess. Okay, well, we've got this kind of leathery thing here. I'm not sure how I'm going to paint that leather or this or that. No, you want to have it down to where okay, leather is Mornfang brown with an Agarax highlight with a Bugsman's glow and then an Ushabti bone or something. You want to have a formula in place, and you can write it down. It's probably better if you do. I don't. I just kind of remember it, which kind of sucks, because then if you go back to do it later, you may or may not remember it. So probably write it down, but you don't have to if you don't want to. But this is on the test model. This is going to help establish how you're going to go about painting everything else. All right, so test model is done. Test model probably came from a core unit, some sort of troop choice, something you have a lot of. I would then say, go ahead, work on the rest of the unit, get that unit finished. And typically the way I kind of go through is I like to base coat everything first. Once everything is base coated, then I'll move on and start shading everything. And then after that, I'll highlight everything and then, finishing touches kind of thing. And the reason I do it that way is that at any point, once you have all the base colors, you no longer have any primer showing. It is a fully painted mini at that point, and you just need to make it look pretty. So now that we've got that test model painted, its whole unit is painted up, we're going to keep on going, and we're just going to continue on through the list. This is number 4, and it's basically just keep grinding. You want to keep on pushing every day. You don't have to paint that much. I painted up 1,500 points of Blood Angels in just over a month, and I painted for maybe 1 hour a day. Maybe. All right. So we're grinding, we're painting every day, and I would recommend starting with your troop choices. And then for me, I like to paint the HQs. And that's because, well, what are you always going to have? You're always going to have your HQs. You're always going to have your troops. And typically, troops are the most boring thing to paint. And HQs, in my opinion, are one of the funnest, because they're usually very dynamic in their pose, and you want them to look extra good. So you're going to enjoy putting, well, I don't know if you're going to enjoy, but you're going to put more effort into them. Once we have worked through the troop choices and the HQs, then you're going to want to go through and start adding other units. And this is where you can kind of spice it up. I mean, maybe you want them all to be just exactly the same with no differences. But an example I have is all of my Knights of Ball, their shoulder trimmings are gold. And when I went to go paint my Hellblasters, I decided that heavy support guys are going to have silver trim. And even just that little bit of difference just added enough variety to not make it the same. Even though Primaris are basically all the same minis with just different guns, it still kept it, kind of flavorful. And like I said, with the Reavers, I mixed it up. I changed up their scheme so they don't have any red. They have bone color and black. And it's just things like that you can do that kind of spice it up. And honestly, that's pretty much all there is to it. Is just follow the steps. If you know your scheme, you're not going to get stuck anywhere on the model when you're painting it. You're going to know what colors to paint stuff. If you're working on a list, it's not like you're going to wonder what you need to paint. You already know what you need to paint, and you're kind of focused in already on a specific, group of models, which is good. And then number 3, we did that test model. We have a formula in place. We know how to paint the miniatures in the army, and we're just going to keep on rolling through that, and then we're just going to keep on grinding until we get through that list. Now, one very important rule that I probably should have put in at the beginning: this process works best if you don't let yourself play with it. And what I mean is, if you don't let yourself play with the army until it's fully painted, that is going to provide so much motivation to push through and get done, because you're going to want to play with them. All right, guys, so that was basically all of my kind of tips and tricks on planning your project and getting a fully painted army. And at that point, you've got the 1,500 points painted up. You can add more units to it, keep expanding the army and get it bigger and bigger and bigger. Or you can, create another list and build up from there. Whether it's that army or a different army, you're going to feel good about what you've done, and I hope that you'll feel, excited to keep on hobbying. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for this video. In the next video, I'm going to talk about painting tips and how to maximize that 1 hour a night that you're painting, or, your painting time in general. But yeah, I hope to see you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please like, favorite, and subscribe, and comment down below. And if you have any questions regarding the hobby, please comment down as well. All right, guys, see you next time.